Because both mercury and lead are metals, they follow a similar procedure through the use of spectroscopy to measure their concentrations. However, mercury uses cold vapor atomic fluorescence spectroscopy due to the fact that it is a gas at room temperature and is highly volatile, whereas lead and many other common metals use plasma mass spectroscopy. And in plasma mass spectroscopy, the liquid sample, as you can see here, is introduced through the use of a nebulizer that you can see here, which turns it into aerosol droplets. And these droplets then go through the spray chamber here, and this is done in order to ensure that only the smallest particles reach the ICP torch here. And because if too big droplets get through, then it'll mess up the data collected. And so in the ICP torch, we have the plasma that is formed by argon gas and the high temperatures. And so inside the ICP torch, the droplets that are allowed to pass through actually turn into a solid, and then they're turned into a gas. And so what happens is that as the droplets go through, the atoms travel through the plasma inside the torch, and they absorb energy. And eventually this will cause them to release an electron and become an ion. And these ions are what actually enter the mass spectrometer that you can see here. And inside the mass spectrometer, it separates the ions based on mass. And by setting the spectrometer to a certain radio frequency and voltage, you can allow only ions of a certain size to be allowed to pass through. And so the size that you set it on will depend on the molecule you're testing for. So for lead, it will be one size, but for like, say, silver, it would be another size. And so if the ion is allowed to pass through the mass spectrometer, it will eventually hit the first detector dynode, and this will cause it to release an electron. And so when that electron is released, it'll bounce against a bunch of other dinodes until it becomes a measurable pulse that can be recorded. And based on the size of this pulse, we can determine the concentration of the metal inside the sample. And this is how we determine the concentration of lead or any other metal inside foundation.